Welcome back to LutzTalk. I'm Austin Lutz. If you're new here, we're all about the real world application of the tech that keeps the world connected, from 5G and AI to the collaboration platforms we use every single day. Today's guest has a career path that is unlike most guests you'll probably hear on this show. He started as a civil engineering student at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and went straight into the oil fields as a drilling engineer at Baker Hughes, interpreting live data from thousands of feet underground while wells were actively being drilled. That experience with real time engineering risk and field operations eventually led him into federal safety work with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration out of the Denver regional office. There, he investigates some of the most serious workplace incidents across construction, oil and gas, and heavy industry. He's a professional engineer, a certified safety professional, a drone pilot, and a semi ex podcaster on a show titled Who Invited Will. Neil Schneider is a doer, a thinker, and someone whose entire career has been about understanding how small decisions inside complex environments lead to very big outcomes. We're going to get in the weeds on oil fields, safety investigations, drones, communication, and how all of that ties together. Neil, thanks for joining me.
Hey Austin, thanks for having me. I appreciate the intro. It's a very nice intro.
Yeah, man.
Probably the nicest I've got. I don't know if I deserve it, but yeah, that's a little bit about me for sure.
No, you absolutely deserve it. I think, for the folks listening, I've known Neil for several years. Our relationship started like a lot during COVID when we were all, meeting online, and I was introduced to Neil through a good friend of mine, Jay, who was episode one of this podcast. You guys were starting your own during that time, and we got to know each other. But I wanted to kind of start, Neil. Just a little bit about your background. Obviously, being a PE, studying civil engineering at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, working at Baker Hughes, and then kind of now working at OSHA. Like, how did you get here? Like, how did you get to the point where you wanted to work at OSHA and do the things that you do and apply some of that engineering mindset to safety standards?
Yeah, it's probably a very unusual career path. I think not a lot of people go the path that I've gone. I'll first start off. I gotta mention that I'm for this to make sense, you gotta understand that I'm half Persian. So my mom is from Iran, my dad is an American, and in the Persian culture, as a male, um, you get really pushed into like four avenues. You're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a dentist, one of those things most likely, or a very successful businessman, entrepreneur. And so my uncle was on my mom's side, her brother. So my uncle was a civil engineer for in California for the government, local government, and was very successful. And I saw that, and my parents were both teachers, so they were really on me when it comes to school. I was an athlete as well. We can talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
But school always came first, and math and science was always very important. Uh, I something I enjoyed, and plus my parents really pushed me in that way. So I went to the University of Louisiana on a athletic scholarship and an academic scholarship. I did a bunch of engineering internships, and I'll talk about those a little bit later as well. And because of those internships in Louisiana, I got the opportunity between my junior and senior year in the summer to work for Baker Hughes on their engineer in there as an engineering intern,
Yeah.
and understanding what they do. I was working only in the office because going out to an oil rig can be very dangerous, so they didn't want to send any interns out there. But you learn the admin stuff. You learn about data. You learn about it was a reliability engineering intern, so we would analyze tool failures downhole from the office,
Hmm.
and you kind of learn a little bit about what's going on in the field. At the end of that internship, I was lucky enough to get a offer when I graduated to work for Baker Hughes as basically it's what's called measurement while drilling personnel, which helps the directional driller and gathers all the data when they're out on the oil rigs. And it's a field job.
And is that like what you've probably seen on like TikTok or Instagram, where like the guys are running the cylinders down into the ground, or is that something
Yeah,
different? Okay, got it.
yeah, they're running. You can watch YouTube videos. It's called tripping in the hole, where they're the roughnecks is what you want if
Yeah,
you want to
yeah, the
call them.
roughnecks. Yeah, you see like they got the chains wrapped around the small cylinders and they're pushing them and
Yeah,
adding to them. That's kind of the work that you were doing at the time.
I wasn't doing so. I was kind of
Yeah,
I
not you
was
weren't
the
a
guy
roughneck.
I was right. I wasn't a
On
roughneck
the data side.
myself,
Yeah.
but I was working with them. Like I'd go up on the rig floor when we were taking the tools out of the hole. I have to talk to the guys, talk to them about how to safely disassemble the tool. Got to know those guys quite a lot because I was living out on the job sites. You when you're working in these remote areas on land, it's similar to offshore. There's nothing around you. Um, I got hired. I took the job. I went up to Wyoming and I was working in North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado on very large drilling rigs. Basically, I'm in the trailer, like the operations trailer, which is about 100 yards from the rig. We have an operations trailer that it runs 24 hours a day. So sometimes I'd be working the night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., or sometimes I'd be working the day shift from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you're out there for 30 to 60 days straight, working 7 days a week, no holidays.
Mm.
Um,
Wow, it's gonna be
Drilling
tough.
rigs run 365, 24/7. They're very expensive to run. So when you got big oil companies paying for those rigs, they don't want it to shut down. Um, so I was working out there. I did that. I was part of the engineering program for Baker Hughes. I was out there for about 4 years. And then I was tired of working 300 plus days a year, even though the pay was very good. They pay you very good because they take your life away. You're sacrificing your life
Yeah,
uh,
I've heard that.
for paycheck. Yes, absolutely. And you get burned out. I was trying to transfer into the office, but oil went from about $120 a barrel to about $20 a barrel. So the oil industry got absolutely hammered around 2016, 2000 from 2014 to about 2017. It
Okay.
was a very bad time for the oil industry. I was able to survive most of it, but I wanted to get out of the field and I wanted to work in an office 40 hours a week, kind of get back to a normal life as I was, turning 26 years old. I was tired of just living a crazy life. It was
Yeah.
very fun. I have a lot of stories and we'll get into that, but it was a lot. So at the time, I was trying to get out of the oil industry. The Denver Post wrote a very nasty article about OSHA on the front page, and it was about how OSHA at that time for the last year had given like a couple thousand construction citations, and they had only issued less than 10 oil and gas citations, and there was more fatalities in the oil and gas field that year than there was in the construction industry.
Hmm.
So it was basically showing that OSHA didn't know what they were doing on inspections because nobody was getting citations in the oil and gas industry. They were getting the runaround and nobody understood the technical aspects of what was going on and what questions to ask. Because this is a very niche industry. When you see a rig, when you look at a rig, you look at a rig a whole lot different than I look at a rig
Yeah, I'm
as
sure.
a guy who's
I
worked
wouldn't even
out.
know where to start. All I see
Exactly.
is like the stuff on TV where you've got the pendulum swinging back and forth, and you've got the cylinders going into the ground. That's how I think of oil rigs.
Right, exactly. So that's how I think a lot of OSHA personnel were looking at it as well. I don't think they had very good training at the time. And so they were looking for somebody with some oil and gas experience to be on the safety and health side, and work for the government, which I would say is the opposite spectrum of the oil field.
I was
So I
gonna say,
kind
I
of,
mean that's part of the discussion too. I think taking that leap from private sector to public sector is an interesting transition. I've got several friends that are in discussion with getting out of public sector and going into private sector. Even today. So I think for you, it's interesting to hear your perspective and kind of like the first few years of your career out of college. You worked 100 hours a week and just kind of made yourself, and then when you turned 26, it was like, okay, actually, I want to go out and kind of be like the change and be more like helpful to some of these people that are working out there.
As a government employee, I'll say now I work for the federal government, but I would say I think it's best for somebody not to go straight from college to the government. I think you need some private sector experience to show you how things work out in the real world, essentially, because the government life is significantly different.
Hmm.
It's a lot more tape, and I think it's very good experience to have private sector um, career experience prior to going to the government. I do not recommend government to private sector because I think you get um, trained in a certain way. Once you get into the government, your life goes a certain way, and you become accustomed to that sort of life.
Yeah.
And I think the private sector is significantly more chaotic than the government is, and
Yeah.
the government's a little
I,
bit
I,
more
I
organized.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
My wife teaches school, and I work in private sector. So we kind of get to see both sides of the spectrum. So I definitely understand where you're coming from on that. What do you think? What would you say the biggest transition is from taking that leap from private to public? Like, for you in your career, other than like the obvious of, pay being different, and then also just the general way business gets conducted.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest differences the amount of job stability, especially in the federal government. I mean, you basically, if you want to get fired in the federal government, you basically have to like steal a government car or something like that.
Okay.
Like do something ridiculous
Yeah.
to that in the private sector you get in a lot of trouble for. Job stability is significantly different. Working hours are significant. You're almost on like a banker's schedule, like 8 to 4:30, 9 to 5. You're really not. Um, I don't want to say for all agencies. OSHA is different. I mean, accidents happen at night, and so sometimes we have to go out in the middle of the night. But it's relatively rare where you're getting dragged out on weekends, holidays, anything of that nature. And I would say that the government is a much slower moving object than most private sector businesses, which I think is actually to the detriment of the government. I think it's such a big machine that there's too much red tape.
Yeah.
Things don't change quickly. You really have to push for change. Um, there's a lot of policies, procedures, a lot of written documentation, and there's a lot of. I'm not ex-military, so for me, somebody's rank. Um, I'm not gonna. If somebody is wrong, that's my boss or even above my boss. I'm not nervous to call them out and explain why they're wrong and how we should
Yeah.
change from their idea. But a lot of the ex-military people that I work with, they're very into rank. So if your rank tells somebody higher rank than you tells you something to do, you do it. Doesn't matter what you think. You just do it.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah, I've seen that in public sector jobs a lot. And working in private sector, younger, earlier on in your career, um, we don't see that. Even now, like I work in the private sector, if somebody like military or not, if somebody has a problem or an issue arises, you just bring it up, and that usually gets corrected.
right. Um, So yeah, that's one of the major differences between private and public. And I'm very happy in my public sector role. I like serving people and being a civil servant. So that's why I chose what I chose.
Love it. Great. Um, what would you say when we talk about applying your like rigid process structure of being a PE, going to school to be a civil engineer? How do you think like small process failures become major safety issues? I know you see a lot of cases in your role at OSHA, and something so small as like not putting something back or not closing a gate or not following a specific protocol, like obviously that could have far-reaching effects. But how do you view that? How do you view small process failures becoming major safety issues?
Well, I saw process failures out in on the oil field, and I've seen a lot of process failures. Obviously, as working for OSHA, going into establishments, I'm on the enforcement side, so I'm going into situations where there's been a fatality, explosion, amputations, major injury, you name it. I've pretty much seen it. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've seen on the OSHA side a little bit. Um, I'll say this. I've had the opportunity, I'm very grateful for it, to have spoken not just on the enforcement side, but I do a lot of collaborative work with businesses as well in regards to safety and health regulations. So I've had access to executives, top executives, CEOs, um, some of the biggest safety and health directors for the oil and gas industry or manufacturing industry out there, and I've noticed a significant correlation from the culture that executive has in the business, meaning their demeanor in regards to safety and health. What do they actually believe, and how do they speak about safety and health in the work site or in the workplace? That culture is absolutely, it drips down from the top. It starts from the top, and it absolutely does. And there is a correlation to injury rates compared to what those executive directors feel about safety and health. Are they more production oriented, or are they more safety and health oriented? But I always tell employers, if there are ways where incidents happen and you're not going to get a citation, or you're not going to get penalized for it, and there's really four distinct strategies that you need to do. You need to first develop a work rule for that particular procedure. And then once you develop that work rule, you need to communicate that work rule to your employees, to your management staff, so that they understand, they're trained on that work rule, so they understand what it means, why they need to do it, etc. Then, if somebody is not following said work rule, that management official needs to be enforcing it, meaning there needs to be disciplinary program associated with not following the rules, right? You don't do it once, you do it once, you get a warning, then you get a write-up, then you get maybe a suspension, whatever it is that needs to be in action.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's all correlated to audits of the facility, meaning your managers need to be walking around ensuring, it's not just you tell an employee to do something, you never go check on them again, you don't monitor them. You got to make sure they're following said policy and documenting said process, because it's
Mm-hmm.
showing that you've looked for these hazards, you've looked for these issues, and if you've been doing your walkarounds, you've been looking for them, you don't see them, that's great. Because when that incident, if, excuse me, or when that incident happens, most employers want to say, oh, that was employee misconduct, or oh, that was supervisor misconduct.
Yeah.
But there are legal stipulations that you have to go through to prove that that's employee misconduct. If you never trained them on the rule, how is it going to be employee misconduct? If we interview employees and they say, yeah, we do this all the time, our managers watch us, they never stop us, how is that misconduct? Right? It's like a puppy dog, right?
Right.
Who's misbehaving or barking when they shouldn't be barking.
Yeah. So
And then
yeah.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
you're just saying, fundamentally, some of that structure and process that's in place to protect employees really starts at the top, right? The managers, the people that actually are in charge of, the people that are drilling wells and in oil rigs and things like that. Like, they have to be the one to kind of set the tone, and then moving forward, you kind of come in, or you're able to at least determine whether or not, when you interview someone after an incident occurs, whether or not they actually have a strict rule, like rule book that they follow, or if this is all just you being told a story that they rehearsed prior to you showing up. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say that they've rehearsed something or not. I don't feel like that typically happens, but I mean, we interview as many people as we can. We do have a timeline jurisdiction. We only have 6 months to do an investigation, no matter how minor, no matter how in depth. It's all, you got 6 total months.
Hmm. From
Try not to
incident to finish, that's the timeline?
from it from incident to issuance. That is correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with these recent shutdowns, you got to factor those times into it too. That takes away time from us for doing those investigations.
Yeah.
Uh, But yes, it is a very top-down culture. Absolutely, it trickles down from the very top. Now, that trickle-down process may get lost in some of those middle managers, but it does define the overall culture. It's not going to be perfect, but if you have a great culture set in place, I think employees believe in that culture and will act accordingly. And I do believe it's related to incident rates as well
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
lowering.
I could see that. I mean, I think like not just in, like oil and gas. I think a lot of companies have that, right? The trickle down component where, if someone at the top leads by example or they lead by shouting, the employees are going to take up, they're going to take that and they're going to copy that and they're going to do that to the people that work below them, right? They're the manager. Their employees are going to get the same effect that they get talked to by their manager. What?
And businesses that commit to the hierarchy of controls, meaning there are administrative controls, there's PPE, right? Everybody talks about, oh, well, we give them PPE. Okay. Then you've got businesses who are like, okay, how do we eliminate the hazard? How can we get this hazard out of the facility, out of this process altogether?
Hmm.
That typically takes a lot more financial commitment. It's not cheap to do so. If you want to engineer something out, also not cheap to do so. It's a lot easier to make a rule or give them protective equipment and say, hey, be careful, than going into the hierarchy and trying to eliminate, trying to engineer hazards out. And the companies that are willing to financially commit to the top of the hierarchy, meaning the engineering controls and eliminating,
Yeah.
typically are significantly more successful in regards to the back end of preventing injuries. Because again, those injuries cost a lot of money for companies as well, and they're trying to just dodge them. And then you've got other companies who are more proactive in trying to prevent them.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the next topics I wanted to cover is around, how do you balance the enforcement of the rules versus helping employers actually fix the problems? Do you actually do that in your role where you kind of come in and say like, this isn't what just happened, here's what you can do to fix it, or is that not part of the job role that you're in today?
Well, OSHA has different aspects to it. We have consultation programs, meaning we have consultants who will go in free of charge to employers who register. They just call the Colorado State OSHA consultation program. They get on a list, and a OSHA consultant will come out there and do a full inspection if they want. If an employer wants it, we'll do a complete comprehensive inspection, looking at their programs, looking at their facility, and telling them where they're out of compliance with. The only loophole or catch to that, the only catch to that for an employer to do that is they have to agree that whatever that OSHA consultant finds, they have to abate that hazard. They have to fix the hazard. They have to
Mm.
fix that issue, and that could be a very high. To abate something could cost a lot of money. So,
So it
but
kind
it.
of de-incentivized people to want to do that as a
I'm
result of
sorry.
it kind of de-incentivizes businesses to want to engage in that service.
In a
In a
way,
way,
but
yeah.
in a way, I mean, it could be a hefty abatement strategy. Let's say it's like air monitoring, or they're welding and they're exposed to significant fumes, like trying to get an HVAC system to remove the fumes they need out of their shop. That can be expensive, right? But if the employer were to not abate it, they then it comes to us, and then we get told, hey, there's an employer that's exposing the employees to hazards. These are the hazards. They're not willing to abate it, and then enforcement has to go out and issue penalties. That's very rare that happens. I think it's happened like once in my entire career, 10-year career with OSHA.
Mhm.
Typically, if someone signs up for a consultation program, they get the guidance from that consultant, and they abate and fix the hazards. Now, I'm more um, enforcement based, but so I deal, again, I'm going in and how can I say this? It's like I'm not a big fan of. I don't do my job because I like to give tickets to employers and citations and big monetary penalties. It's not why I do what I do. I love the opportunity to help the American worker. I don't believe anyone should have to be going to work and being exposed to hazards day by day by day. You're going to work to support your family. You shouldn't be getting hurt at work or being exposed to danger, and going in and eliminating, going to these workplaces and giving guidance to employers of how to fix it. I know it does come with citations at times. Sometimes it doesn't. Depends what it is.
Mm.
Um, but again, there's a lot of we're very abatement, or I'm very abatement oriented. I'm not all about the monetary penalties. I want things to get fixed. That's what I am out there, is to provide guidance of how to fix these hazards and educate the employers so this doesn't happen again. And I'm also with this, especially this last year, we've lost tons of personnel in the federal government, as you probably have seen. That
Yes.
is actually happening. We probably lost 30 to 40% of our people. So now we were already wearing a lot of hats. Now we're wearing dozens of hats. Every day is a different day for me at OSHA, basically. Um, but we go out and do voluntary protection program assistance, meaning we go out and we have these employers who go above and beyond OSHA regulations, and they commit to this program, and we give them guidance throughout the program of how to be better and better and better, and then they get audited. So we have it's like less than 1% of the workforce, but I'm also involved in going out to those facilities and doing evaluations and giving them guidance on how to be better and how to remove hazards from their facilities.
Nice.
So that's also a little bit. So there's a little bit of regulation, there's a little bit of cooperative programs, there's a little bit of consulting.
So nice
It's a
mix.
mix.
Yeah, nice mix of both, or of all
Yeah,
three. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. You can't just hammer people. We want to give them. Sometimes employers just don't know about how safety and health is relatively niche at times. You may think you know what you know, but you also don't know what you don't know. So going on educating is a big part of that process.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's good insight. I did want to touch too on kind of moving away from some of the process stuff and the enforcement. I did see, and I didn't even know this, even though we've known each other for a couple of years. But what's it like running the drone program there in Denver? Are you a drone guy? Like, that's been a hobby of yours for a while?
So I basically was approached by my boss maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and he's like, I work at the regional office. We oversee like 5 to 7 offices, basically.
Okay.
uh, about 100 people, 100 compliance officers. And he's like, hey, we're buying drones. We need a drone program manager. Do you want to do it? And at this time, I didn't know anything. I didn't know a thing about drone. Like, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. He's like, we have nobody else to do it. We think you'd be a good guy to do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I learned tons. So we use Skydio drones because they're American made.
Okay, I was going to ask
And
that. Yeah, yeah. How does that look like for the U.S. government to be buying drones? Because I know there's
we
a lot
used
of
to use
DJI, and all those other.
Mavic. We did have a DJI Mavic, but then a few years into owning it, the government came out and said no more Chinese drones.
Yeah.
So we had to give it back. So we no longer have the Mavic, but we have several drones, Skydios, X10s, and then we have under the program, I wrote our program policies, procedures, checklists. You have to get, as a commercial pilot, you have to go through FAA certification. You have to take, it's like a 3-hour test, and you have to study for a couple of days. I'm not going to say it's like becoming a pilot, but you have to know a lot of airspace classifications, where you can fly a drone, looking at airspace maps. It is a more technical than you would ever think.
Yeah,
It
I'm sure. I'm
really
sure.
is
I've
not.
never flown a drone, so I don't know. I've got some DJI cameras, and I do like a couple like streaming things, but I haven't really gotten into the drone space. They're super cool, and I think for you guys in the space that you're in, being able to like take a drone over a site, or and kind of get like a mapping of where things are and look at incidents, and that's a really cool tool at your disposal.
So there was times we didn't have access to looking at like, we don't go up on like flat roofs. We don't go up ladders. We're not going to expose ourselves to any hazards on a job site, but there's times where we need to see what the site looks like. We need to see what the employees were exposed to or are exposed to, and that's why we use the drones. to look at things that we wouldn't be able to see from the ground, like a 10-story building. If people are working on the roof, we see that guys are on the edge, they don't have fall protection, but we don't know what's all up there. So we'll fly the drone up there. We've had people fall from cell phone towers, right? 300 feet up. How are we going to go see it? Well, we're going to fly the drone up there and we're going to take video.
Yeah.
We have, we do 3D scans with the drone to get measurements of facilities, where the drone will take hundreds, even thousands of images. And we have processing software that we plug those images into, and it gives us a 3D image where we can get very accurate dimensional measurements.
Mm.
We've used those for trenches, because there's a lot of dimension regulations with excavations and trenches. I think the coolest thing we've done is there was a building collapse near an airport, and there was it resulted in a fatality or two. And the engineers that were trying to analyze why the structure had collapsed weren't able to go into the rubble because it was still structurally unsafe. Like, it could collapse more. It was like half standing. So what we did is we got our drone, we took it out there, and we put it into this like scan mode. It's an autonomous mode where you give it basically 4 pillars, and you tell it in the inside the pillars, like, go investigate inside these pillars. Just go around and go search and take video for us. And it has obstacle avoidance on it. So it was going through all this rubble, and I mean, it was going within inches of hitting different columns in this rubble. And because of that drone video, we did a live stream of the video. We had engineers watching. We also recorded it. Because of the drone, the engineers involved in the case were able to determine why the structure collapsed, which is something they would have never been able to do without the drone, because they wouldn't have been able to go into the rubble.
Wow, that's so cool.
And analyzing the rubble via the drone going in the middle of it gave them the answer to why the incident happened.
Oh man, yeah, that's interesting. I never would have. I mean, I would have always thought, like, with a drone, kind of just the standard use case where you fly it over, you take pictures, you kind of do use it for documenting. But that's a way advanced case of taking that and using it to actually solve why this happened.
Yeah. And the amazing thing with it too, because the rubble was all bent and out of shape, you can't, and it was a very large site. You wouldn't be able to manually fly that drone into it either, because you can't really see where it's at. Even if you're looking at the video, there's so much rubble and there's so much bent columns and steel. That's why the autonomous mode was so beautiful with that, because the drone was able to perform with obstacle avoidance. There was several times I'm like, there's no way it's going to fit through that crack. There's no way it's going to hit. I was nervous the entire time, because again, this was kind of the program I've developed. So if something happens, I know I'm going to get in trouble, but it worked pretty beautifully. So yeah, I love the drone program.
And you're still running that today? Like, you're still running the drone program
Yeah.
there? Okay.
We've expanded our technology now. We actually have phones that, instead of using the drone for the 3D scans, I came across this program. It's called Pix4D, and we use that on our cell phones, and we'll scan objects from the ground and get 3D images from those. So we can do 3D images and measurements via Pix4D. It's called Pix4D Catch, and it's something I developed in OSHA, and I'm spreading across the country. I just came across it one day because I was doing a 3D scan with the drone. And I went onto the Pix4D website, and I saw somebody with a phone on a trench. And we do trenches. Trenches and excavations are huge in OSHA. They're one of the main reasons for fatalities across the country, because they collapse with people in them. So there's a lot of dimensional requirements with those. So we do a lot of those inspections, and we use engineering rods to measure those. And now we're transitioning into this Pix4D, where we can scan it with our phone, and it will provide a 3D image, which we can get much more accurate measurements than we would with a manual rod where we take pictures of.
Yeah,
that's kind
that is
of updated
such a cool use case. Is that through like LiDAR from the like iPhone, or yeah? Okay,
That's correct.
taking all
LiDAR
data.
sensors.
Yeah, very
In
cool.
iPhone Pros and Pro Maxes, they have LiDAR sensors, which is basically a laser that goes out, and then that amount of time that it takes to get back it's able to give you that distance.
Very cool. Um,
We have very cool cases. I wish I could show them to you, but
yeah, no,
you know,
it's okay. I realize that
I,
not everything can be
no, I'm just
shared.
kidding.
Not everything can be shared.
But yes, that's one technological advancement that OSHA is going through at the moment.
Are you still playing tennis these days, Neil? Trying to, hanging in there,
Uh,
ish.
well, I wouldn't say I compete anymore. I've lost the, when you play at a certain level, you have you have certain expectations for yourself,
Definitely.
and when you can't physically do that anymore, no matter how much you train due to injuries, just your tendons all beat up from years and years of playing, you don't really want to compete. You love being out on like I'll go out and hit with people
Hmm.
from time to time, maybe twice a month, but I don't compete anymore. I don't. I may maybe later, maybe I'll play like a men's like age division, like 40 and over or something,
Yeah.
but I don't think I can. It's super hard with my life, how busy I am. I do a lot of volunteer stuff. I have my own. I do have my own tennis business as well as my OSHA job.
Oh, that's
I,
right.
I
Yeah,
have
yeah. You were kind of starting that off several years ago. Whenever we
it's
talked, is that
still
still going pretty
still
good?
in. I sell tennis equipment to high schools and universities across the country. I started that on my own. I got, I'll call it a merger or a buyout with a very large retailer in
Hmm.
Colorado called Game Set Match. And now I basically work with them to promote them across the country. They're one of the top 10 retailers in the country. They're definitely the biggest in the Rocky Mountains, and they're trying to expand the name. And so I was working with, I had a company called Schneider Tennis and was working with tons of universities and high schools. So I helped them get into those schools, and now they're their clients. But
Okay.
um,
Yeah, they're kind of like a kind of a niche retailer of all things pickleball, racquetball, tennis. Is that what I'm looking
yep,
at here? Yeah. Okay.
anything racquetball or tennis, they have it all. Padel is also a big up and coming sport. The ones where they play in the glass box. Have you seen that?
That's I thought that was highlight. Is that not the same thing?
I don't know what highlight is. It's called Padel, Padel. It's big on the East Coast,
Padel.
but I think yeah, it's like a cooler version of pickleball.
Oh, okay, interesting. No, I've never seen this. Pickleball was all the rage, and then I haven't heard much about it in the last few months. A lot of these sports I feel like kind of come and go, but I'll have to check out Padel. I've not heard of that.
I think Padel is more European and East Coast. Um, Pickle is just there's not a lot of excitement, especially for tennis players. It's so it was basically for geriatric people like 20 years ago, and then some guys and gals who couldn't make it playing tennis decided to go and try to be these pro pickleball players and dominate the game. You can become an expert if you're a tennis player. You can be great at pickleball within an hour. So it's not like I don't have a lot of um I don't want to say respect, but I wouldn't like
Maybe.
admire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like admire like pro pickleball players. Like I'm like
I didn't know
when
that was a thing. I didn't know they had a pro division of pickleball. I always thought it was kind of like what, middle aged dads did, or like, moms that needed something to do during the day, kind of sport. But
yeah.
it's good to know.
Did you watch any of the Australian Open by chance that
I
just
I
happened?
did not know.
Okay. Well, the men's semifinals were both five setters, and they were each about 5 hours long, and it was incredible tennis with an unbelievable amount of stamina and very hot temperatures on a huge court. Um, Unbelievable levels these guys were playing at. And after I watched the matches, those two matches, it was about 10 hours of tennis. I told myself the first thing I said is like pickleball can never live up to this. Like there's nothing that pickleball could do to ever get the excitement levels of what we just witnessed with this tennis tournament. So
A true
you
competitor.
may hear that I have a little bit of I don't dislike towards pickleball. They're kind of taking our court. Somebody has to vouch for tennis and believe in tennis, and I still do.
Hey, look, we all need advocates for certain, sports. I applaud that.
Yeah, but tennis basically, tennis is the reason why I'm here today. Like tennis made life for me. Like I'm not, my life path is, I can't even imagine what my life would have been without tennis. When I was a young kid, uh, my dad, I mean, I came from like a lower middle class family. I wouldn't say we had like tons of money by any means. I mean, both public school teachers. But I remember my dad telling me, like, if you want to go to college, you're gonna have to get a scholarship. And so I was really motivated, academically and athletically to try to go and get that. Um, and tennis got me into a university. I've made tons of friends all across the world via tennis. I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how many people I've met in my life because of tennis. Tennis, it got me basically into Baker Hughes, and then Baker Hughes got me into Ocean. And it all comes back to tennis. My work ethic, the way I do stuff at work, my mentality is all based, and the foundation of it all comes from me learning how to play tennis and being in very competitive matches since I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
It all stems back to tennis, really.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely my first love
Yeah, and I can see
in
that
my.
too. I think, playing at that level that you played at too, Neil. I mean, I think, anytime you mention like Division 1 sports in college, I think that's certainly a different level than like, kind of doing it as a hobby on the weekends. That takes a lot of time and commitment. And I think, just you talking, the way you kind of talk about your career progression, and then obviously the passion that you have for not just tennis, but the drone program, and like occupational, or with OSHA. I think how you want to be like genuinely helpful to people. I think that shines through. So thank you for all you do. I think it's important that people hear that, because sometimes when we think about like OSHA and we think about like governing bodies, we think, oh, those guys just want to, or they're out to get us. I think genuinely you care about a lot of people and care about doing things the right way. Yeah, and so Neil, I think that brings us kind of to one of the last topics I really wanted to cover. We've had such a good discussion today around your experience, and then obviously all the things that have brought you to this point. But what would you give? What kind of guidance would you give for engineers, and early career professionals starting out in the field that you're in, specifically around like you know maintaining focus and keeping going when things get tough? Because I think that's often hard, right? When you got so many responsibilities and you've got so many irons in the fire, when you're young and you're not sure what you want to do, career wise 10 years from now, but that like you want to be a civil engineer and you want to be able to help people and build things. So like, what kind of guidance would that look like for early career professionals?
Well, I think a big reason why I went to engineering, especially civil engineering, is that it's so broad. I felt like there was going to be many job opportunities in that field. You can do a civil and you can study civil engineering, but then you could go into mechanical engineering field after work. You can go into the oil field after work. That's what I did. There's a lot of different things. You can go into business. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that an engineering degree would qualify you for. And that's one reason why I wanted to go into it. Another thing, um, when someone majors in something, I think it's very important to try to get um, work experience in that field, like during your summer breaks. I think internships are a game changer. I had an internship every summer through college, and it was different internships. And that's where I learned that, doing drafting work and doing AutoCAD work and doing design work was just too boring for me. It wasn't what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think I would say I have a much more of a social engineer than many engineers. A lot of engineers like to be behind a computer and they don't like to communicate and talk to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I think I'm significantly different than that. So I wanted to do something where, I was in the field more, and it was like I like the hybrid field and office position rather than office 24/7. And I learned that through an internship. I think a lot of people, if you don't have internships in your field, you start working a job and you kind of stuck there for a while. and you don't really like it, and you start regretting things. Thankfully, with the internships that I had in Louisiana, um, I learned I didn't really like that kind of intense engineering work. So I needed to find something different. And then that's when I had got and if it wasn't for those internships prior to Baker Hughes, I would have never got the Baker Hughes internship. Because my sophomore year, I tried to go for the Baker Hughes internship. I interviewed, they never even responded to me after the interview. And I said, okay. And again, it goes back to determination and work ethic. I said, all right, those guys are going to say no. I'm going to go get other internships and I'm going to come back with more work experience and I'm going to try to go for this again. My junior year, between my junior and senior year, I did the interview and I told the HR person, I said, you guys made me go work and get career experience. I was even working while I was on the tennis team too in engineering positions. I was doing tennis, engineering, and I had an engineering internship at the same time. And I did that to try to get that Baker Hughes job because I knew they'd be back on campus the next year. Went to the on-campus interviewing for the internship and ended up getting past that level. And I said, you guys didn't even respond to me last time. He's like, don't worry, we're going to respond to you this time. I said, okay. Ended up getting, that's where I met Will, one of my best friends. We met at that. He was at Colorado School of Mines. He got the internship for that location of Baker Hughes, and that's where I got to travel to Denver for the summer and live there, and work as an intern with Will at the same time. So yeah, I think you got to get that work experience prior to graduating to really understand what you want, because a job may not be similar to your studies. It may be different, even in the same field. So it's good to get that experience to kind of figure out what you want before you have to commit in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's tough, right? Because even going through high school, going through college, like you don't really know what you want to do career wise. I think you have a general idea, and I think your comment about you know you can pretty much do anything with an engineering degree. I think is good advice because I mean you can go into what you've gone into. You can go into like a business setting and do data analysis. You can do process improvement. I have friends that work in manufacturing engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, and it's just interesting to see like all those different jobs that are applicable to having an engineering degree. So, thanks for the insight.
There's a lot of people in the world, they say they would look at my career path or what I've done in my life, whether it be tennis or working or whatnot, and they say, man, that guy's lucky. He's lucky. I would say back to them, I'm a big believer in making your own luck. Setting
Is
yourself
that
up.
a Kevin Spacey 21 movie reference? Because I'll tell
Maybe
you that is in the
is it?
movie, and he mentions that specifically.
Okay,
I'll,
Kevin Spacey's not the greatest guy, but he does have a point.
uh,
It is making your own luck. It's if you're failing to plan, you're planning to fail. I'm a total believer in that. So when there's a little glimpse of opportunity, I feel like you have to put in the work and the dedication and take that opportunity and set yourself up for the best case scenarios possible. And again, it takes discipline. It takes a lot of work ethic. But if you get your mind right, I know it's cliche. They say you can do anything, but that is true. I'm a total true believer of that. It may take time, but it absolutely can happen.
no, that's good stuff, Neil. I appreciate it. I think all the insights you shared today, and I think it's often difficult trying to kind of get into the mind of somebody like you, who I prefaced when we started this was not somebody like I would typically interview on a show like this, because a lot of where your passion and expertise comes in is like on the engineering side and around like the enforcement within OSHA. But I think all this has to kind of like all this integrates into some level of communication, and I think that's really the nexus of what this podcast is about, is like how do we all communicate better with each other. And I think you, of all people, have done such a good job of that throughout your career, and then even now today in your role at OSHA. Your whole job is to communicate, right? Whether that's through using drone programs to fly drones, whether it's obviously sending emails, phone calls, boots on the ground, going to see people. Um, there's lots of ways that we can get our point across. So thanks for sharing all that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm typically, to be honest with you, I'm in your chair doing the interviewing with I mean, a big part of my job is interviewing employees,
Mm-hmm.
witnesses, employers, managers, executives, etc. So it's kind of um uh it's a nice friendly reminder of what it's like to be on the opposite side of the table. I won't call it the hot seat by any means because you've been very nice to me, but I can only imagine when somebody from the federal government is asking you a lot of questions on a serious case,
Right.
what it can be like. And that includes depositions in court and whatnot as well. So, yeah, it's interesting to be on the other side of the table because typically I'm on your side.
No, for sure. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and kind of close this out. Just want to give a big thanks to you for joining us today, and to all of you listening at home. I'm Austin Lutz, and this is LutzTalk. Until next time.